Aloha, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the official Ronnie Landis podcast show. And as always, I am your host, Ronnie Landis. I am also the founder of the Holistic Health Mastery program. This is my online holistic nutrition certification course, which is designed to take a student from the basics of natural nutrition all the way to the most cutting-edge areas of integrative health and lifestyle transformation. This program is really unlike anything else that's ever been available on the internet, featuring a comprehensive 70 video lesson curriculum, 55 bonus videos, a student community support group, and a monthly live video training with me personally, which is like doing a coaching session with me and hundreds of students from all over the world each and every month. This program has received incredible reviews and feedback from students of all backgrounds and all educational levels, such as the budding health experts and professionals to longtime holistic wellness enthusiasts, all the way to the complete beginner. There seems to be a lot here to offer to virtually everyone who has a keen interest in learning how to optimize their body, mind, and spirit through redesigning what they believe is possible, not only for their health, but ultimately for their life and the lives of those around them. And one more thing that sets this course apart from all others is that once you enroll, there are no hidden fees, no limitations on the content that you can access up front, and no time restrictions. This means that once you purchase the program, it is yours, period. End of story. There's no 6 or 12-month time limitations with a continuation fee waiting for you at the end. This is a go-at-your-own pace course that you can continue to access as a lifelong resource that will prove to be an investment into your education, into your health, and into your personal growth that will bear fruit for years to come. So you can find more information and enroll into the Holistic Health Mastery program at www.holistichealthmastery.com. Aloha. Welcome to another episode of the official Ronnie Landis podcast show. And today I have two very special guests with me. They're very good friends, and they've been staying with me for the last week or so. And really incredible conversations, journeys, and explorations into consciousness have expressed or have evolved through our conversations basically on an everyday and every night basis, to the point where I realized, like, wow, we need to actually record the central themes and the essence and the substance that we're really tapping into, because it's the real conversations that I think everybody in the world, especially that the type of people like you that are listening to a podcast like this, these are the conversations that we've been missing, into the depth that we want to go, and really breaking down the principles of sacred relationships and the sacred and divine masculine and the feminine energy, and going a step further than most people tend to go. And I'm really excited to bring on these two individuals. LAKSHMI and KETAN Strong are with me here in the studio. How you doing?
We're doing great.
Really good.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Like I said,
It's been awesome.
Yeah, and like I said, the conversations that we've been having have just been really bringing a lot of disparate elements together. They've been weaving together like the tapestry of the picture. I like to use metaphors if anyone hasn't noticed. The picture, the masterpiece essentially that we're wanting to put together to create our life. That's what lifestyle design actually means. You are the conscious designer and architect of your life. And one of the most important areas is relationships. That's like the glue that holds it all together, right?
It really is.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to go into that. But before we do, I just want to get everyone to get a feel for each one of you. What are you about? What's your passion? Yeah.
Well, Ms. LAKSHMI here, and my passion really is love, music, meditation, all the arts. I'm here to just bring my compassion and bring it through my creative flow into the world to just better the world and create more harmony and peace.
And Keaton Strong here, and I love consciousness science and how you can apply this to the practical life that we as human beings can use in our everyday life. And then from this, connect the spiritual and physical bridges in the ways of relationships.
Absolutely. And so, Uma, you're a musician. Mm-hmm. You're a really passionate musician, and that's brought up a lot of cool in-depth conversations about the nature of, changing the paradigm around a lot of the brick and mortar and established perspective of how like the music industry runs or how the movie industry works, and kind of how people are assuming that they have to fit themselves into that mold of how it's always been done, or they can't be successful, they can't totally be as passionate as maybe they would like to be, in their own skin. So
definitely.
What's that experience been like for you?
Well, that experience for me has centered a lot around the concept of money, because the music industry is a way for musicians to make money. However, of course, as most of us know, it is laced with all sorts of other people's agendas and different intentions, and sometimes the musician gets lost in that, and then their true art gets lost as well. So for me, what's worked is to be able to step back from it entirely, and as this island has provided for me a space on Kauai for me to just go inside of myself and find out who I truly am, and remove and clear any programs or limiting beliefs that are blocking me from really embodying who I truly am. And by doing that first, now I feel ready, after like 3 years of doing that basically on this island, now I feel ready to actually go out there and put my music out there and share myself, because I have such a strong identity as the creator that now I can share that pure love with the world. Mm-hmm. And I'm definitely saying yes now to being financially supported in that as an artist in this world, and so that's what I'm now creating. And that's the real thing, is that we are all creators, so we have the ability and the power to create any reality that we choose.
Mm-hmm. And there's a thing, I had Elijah Ray on the show a couple episodes back, and he sat here where you guys are sitting, and I asked him a similar question. He's a little further along in his career, but...
Yeah, he's been a big inspiration to me.
Absolutely, to me too, and I'm not even a musician per se, but I asked him, in reference to the music industry, why have you chosen to forego that linear path and do your passion? And everyone can check out that episode to go more in depth than that, but essentially what he said to me was that there's potential timelines that we see in front of us, and even if you take on the same actions and behaviors and you get far enough, they can parallel, but eventually you get to a place where even the slightest action will divert those paths, and they'll become very far apart 10 years later. So essentially what he was saying to me, and what I'm trying to relay, is that you have a choice of the type of person you're going to become, and the path you take will craft that, and you want to be conscious of how you move forward in these kind of things, because you may end up becoming a person you don't want to be in order to get what you think you want.
That's exactly what I was just expressing, is that that's why I've held back for so long, so I could make sure that I'm at a place in my consciousness where when I do go out, things that come at me and want to take away or use what I have and change it in a way that what it is not. And now I'm able to just be like, no, I know what it is, I know who I am, and this is the way that I'm going to do it, and be strong in that. So it's taken this discovery of my own inner strength and my own inner power to be ready to be a confident, successful musician. Mm-hmm. And the other thing I just want to express is that for all musicians and anybody who's trying to create anything, their dream in the world, you are and we are the energy of success. There is no failure, because it's just, creator doesn't fail. There's just there's no way.
And using this beautiful communication, we can now verbalize more about relationships in this sense too, because, from what I'm hearing and from what I've been hearing through Ronnie's understandings and philosophies as well, is the relationships are more than just how you feel with another being. This is also how you relate to music. This is how you relate to food. It's how you relate to the world and life that we are currently experiencing. And we've all been really conditioned into thinking a certain mind state is how you appreciate this. And in connection with what you were saying, I could then say that, right, it's musicians have to learn, like Elijah Ray kind of demonstrated, that the whole passion behind music, what is your relationship to it? Is it for the money or is it for the passion?
Mm-hmm. Which I think is a essential distinction, right? What I notice in the world as I look at my upbringing and being an athlete, I can totally relate to that because I didn't go the traditional path, so to speak. I didn't really get activated in that part of my purpose at the time till I was like 16, when I had something aligned inside of me that really gave me the confidence to really pursue that. And so I went in a roundabout way, but I noticed that the thing that gave me strength was I just had the next thing revealed to me, and then I jumped in it, gave it my all, and I just knew somehow I had this very deep intrinsic faith. Some people might call it naive. I certainly had those thoughts, but for some reason it was an energy that overtook my the excuses and the defensive-ness. I just bought into it. I'm like, no, I totally believe that can happen, and that's the only thing that lights me up. Therefore, I'm going to do it. So I can relate to that, and it's an interesting dynamic. I think where I want to go with that and with both of you is, you mentioned the relating part and how we relate to other things in our life, and definitely in the dynamic of a relationship with another human being. I'd love to tap into that with you, because listening to Uma, obviously you have your perspective of being her partner in this junction in life. And so I'm curious about what your perspective is, and also that, how your journey is paralleling that.
Well, relationships, from what I've been seeing through the experience, is attempting to maintain your own unique sovereignty while also giving your all to this unique individual, but also maintaining that harmonious relationship in the ways that we've been conditioned in this society. It seems to be the hard things that we're really going through as a species. As we're now collectively advancing in evolution of consciousness and science, we're now also reaching stages of also this way of communication. I mean, we're seeing this in Facebook and other sociological mechanisms that clearly are demonstrating that we're having new ways of communicating. Like through a text message, I'm not really conveyed the emotional qualities that I would have in a person-to-person, interaction. Right. So I think this is where, coming now is when you actually have to put down the smartphone and sit next to your partner and truly say, look, like, this is how I am, this is how you are. How can we really make this work? And also then, being that, in connection, she's an artist in a whole different way. I tend to like to paint my own inner temple, so to speak, where she enjoys the artistic expression of that music from the inside out. So finding time in the morning, for example, in our dynamic of just having that space. Space is key in these new paradigms to understanding relationships, is what I've really seen.
Let's punch the button on that a little bit more. I was really excited to hear that, because, as you know, that's been part of my journey lately, and just the revelations, the insights that have come through being in these more micro relationships, just in terms of they're a little more transitory, because, for me and a lot of people in general, we have stages. Uma, you called it like the preparation relationships, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a really great way to look at it. So for me, I've been getting more clear with my vision that's been inside of me, but somehow I've been outwitting it a little bit through my mind and painting a more, like the perfect partner kind of picture. Mm-hmm. So the communication with myself, I feel, needs to go through refinement. And that's what I really like, and I think you're getting at. And when you say creating space and increasing our communication.
That's exactly what I'm saying, actually, Ronnie. Through creating an inner space and temple, such as through the concepts and practices of meditation or other numerous disciplines, be your choice, you give yourself adequate time to understand the relationship. Many beings, once again, they're living so much to the society's standards now. You know, you have the 9-to-5 job, you have the kids, the wife, and the dogs, and I'm the breadwinner, etc. Now, these are old, outdated mind states in an ever-present and ever-changing socioeconomical system. So now, this is where now, as we've mentioned relationships now, where the question then is really then how do we maintain this in a functioning way in this paradigm? And this is where, as we come back to the term of space, where we can all have this adequate room to feel sovereign and know that our power and energy is dedicated to someone who's also giving back in return.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and when it translates back into, like, for example, like, I've been working on my music all day today, and my beloved has been working on other things, and now we're coming together in harmony to create something together. So it becomes really natural when you have a person that is your other whole. It is what a twin flame truly is, to be perfectly clear, is one soul in two bodies. And if you listeners could see us, you would see that we look very, very similar. We have all these similar features, and that's because we are one, truly. And so because we have done enough work inside ourselves to realize that on very many levels, now we're able to harmonize, because that is where harmonization comes from, is unity. When we realize that we're just one, then it's the end of difficulty, it's the end of struggle, because you're not fighting against yourself, you're harmonizing with yourself. So it's really like amazing experience to look at myself in another body, staring right back at me, and see the concept of the divine masculine embodied right in front of me, as I said. It's really, like, honestly, something that's mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and also there can be all kinds of sociological connotations when we think of the idea of, you know, finding that perfect match, they're going to complete me, or even what you're referring to is that we're two whole sovereign beings coming together. Now, I totally see that, and it's a level of obviousness that's presented to me, but I feel like where it can be slightly confusing for people that are on that sovereignty path, that are on, especially men, right? Because, you know, really, archetypically, men are, you know, we have a quest to complete a mission of some sort, right? There's something that's driving us in our life, intrinsically, so that we feel sometimes that there can be that pull towards the feminine or towards a partner, and the dichotomy that as a man sometimes I come up against is thinking that that partnership per se is going to somehow leak energy from me. It's going to distract me. It's not going to actually enhance my core quest in life. And yet the other quandary is that I do know that I'm not meant to walk this path by myself. Right? There's a room for both of those ideas to come together. Yeah.
And I think in this I think that in this situation, from what you're describing as well, this also comes back, as you said, the sociological conditioning, where you see shows like Jersey Shore, right? So you have these people going out there and being promiscuous with numerous beings and having numerous sexual interactions. And from there, they come back, they're usually a mess, they go through this drunken stage, etc. So it really comes back to knowing yourself and trusting your intuition and not living from the lower the genitals, so to speak, actually feeling from your heart. And this is where the practices like abstinence and these ancient arts actually come in. Is it doesn't mean you don't go have sex. It means that you think and feel before you act. And in the process of doing that, you start to see that
all these beings that would cheat on you or leech from you, or all these just start fading away because you start seeing your main intention of why you would have even engaged that energy in the first place. And I think this is where a lot of males have that struggle. They feel they have to go out and have sex and go to the bars to meet their significant other, and they end up hurting themselves in the process and thinking that's life.
Yeah, I found just thinking about that even last night, it's kind of this it's very illogical when you just look at it, but it is a pattern that somehow we just kind of get into, is that while the man may be on that quest and very committed to it, there is that quandary where you still are physical, sexual, and you're also genuinely, because your heart, if you're on a quest, then it means you have a,
right,
kind of a noble heart, right? So there's a part of you that wants that connection with a woman. So oftentimes we will spread ourselves thin and have these micronized relationships, right, that only get to a certain point, and then the next one will come, the next one, right? And so anyways, that's kind of like the paradox. It seems kind of obvious to me now that I put it out on the table. I'm like, wow, why would I think that spreading myself thin would somehow be a way to conserve energy opposed to actually traveling the path with another partner?
Exactly.
Yeah, and I feel that partner is, everybody wants the twin flame relationship because that is the ultimate relationship. So any other relationship, as I said, and as you relayed before, is that training ground for that twin flame relationship. So in my experience, it's just been a natural process where I meet somebody, we have a connection, and we start a relationship, and everything that we experience together prepares me for my beloved that is sitting right next to me. And if you are able to just do your inner work inside through your meditation and through your spiritual practice, then you don't necessarily need to have a relationship with another person to learn all these things. They're a really good mirror, and it definitely is an accelerated growth path. But you don't have to do it if you don't want to. So the other part of it is that we think we just have to go out there and have sex with people, but we actually don't. And it's funny to say that, but a lot of people do actually believe that. You can just have a relationship with a woman, men, that it's just a pure friendship. And by being aware of yourself and being in control of your energy, you don't have to project anything that woman might feel uncomfortable with. You can just have a pure friendship. And so I think that would be an advisable course for people who are seeking to have company in their lives.
To explore it, not so much non-physically, but without that pre-programmed, societally programmed, again, as a man, there's typically like a sequence of events that typically happen in the engagement of the opposite sex when there's a physical attraction. For a lot of people, it's like, okay, 1 date, 2 dates, 3 dates, and then it's like an unconscious contract that if you get to that point, somehow you'll end up in bed together, right? And so some of that conditioning follows us even as we become more enlightened, meaning we lighten up the baggage load, and we become more aware of these things and start actually practicing them in our lives. This is the one that many of us, this is like the final frontier, so to speak. This is the harmonizing route that is going to bring all the things we actually want to create in the world together. And it's like you said, it's not to say that it's through that physical partner per se, it's through you. What I did last night is I did the binary beats and the remote viewing practice. We'll talk about that later, everybody. But I basically asked with sincere intention, show me the queen inside of me that has not been acknowledged. And that was a great way to shift things for me. And it's me looking into the masculine archetypes, the lover in this case, that gets expressed in one way, like my books or my creativity, but also gets repressed in other ways.
Right. And I think this also stems into what we were discussing the other night as well, about the warrior archetype that is also masculine, and then the lover that is as well. in which case, for our listeners, where the warrior archetype is the aspect of us that is the protector, that I will serve, I will accomplish my mission, etc. And then sometimes we have the case where the lover, I'm the nurturer, I'm the protector of my child, my family, and my well-being in that form. They have this, in this case, a metaphysical quandary with each other where, people also then believe, well, if I divert my path from the warrior path, then the lover, I won't make any progress, and it's that limiting belief system. And it also then comes back to, we even see this in our natural things. In the, on the mainland, I remember here, they have this thing like the 30-minute rule, right? Where a girl texts you that you're interested in, right? And you, yeah, right? And in my homies, all the friends, would say, oh man, wait, you don't text her for at least 30 minutes because, you don't want her to see, you don't want to come off
I know that one really well.
Yeah.
Right. So what we're seeing is we don't really even, as males, sometimes know how to even engage the lover archetype. We feel that the lover has these logical, connotations to it, but really it's not. It's the same as the warrior, where it just, you do what you got to do, and be that man in a healthy way, in the sense of having respect and learning what dominant qualities are in a male, and then learning how to express them appropriately with the divine feminine female, because we have these bizarre, you get into a relationship, you really are tested with who you are as a sovereign being, and where your qualities lie that maybe you don't realize when you're single, like with sex. You may engage in sex and then suddenly you find out that you're in a dominant mode. All of your spiritual evolution has essentially just kind of pushed itself out of the way for that moment as the primal aspects take over. So it's really something that is really, it's in that moment, it's really wise to look at yourself and take a step back, but this is up to each individual. And this is up to the healthy male. The healthy male archetype can really do anything, they really can. And then the feminine archetype is the ultimate support, but they're also sovereign, and we all have these archetypes. That's the thing. I'm just as much as the feminine archetype as the masculine, right?
You just happen to be in a male's body.
Right. And that's something too where it gets a little bit more esoteric and a little more like, cosmological when you begin to access into more of what meditation is bringing you to the table. And when you truly activate your pineal gland, you always hear about this, but when you activate this, you put on Google Glasses is the equivalent, right? You have new access menus to life that other people might not see, and this is also relating to relationships. Because when you are able to communicate using certain energy abilities, which the mystics refer to in numerous documents, well, you begin to have a connection and relationship with nature and a relationship with your food in ways, in all forms, that you've never thought possible.
So yeah, that also translates into a relationship with your inner guidance as well.
Right.
We both experience the quality of having clear guidance.
Yes.
And so when we tune in and we listen, and we know what to do and how to be and where to go each moment by using that internal guiding system. And because we do that, we're able to come together and flow in and out of each other's experience and still be in perfect harmony somehow.
Right.
And I think that the domination and the control that comes from both women and men through the programming is definitely the main blocker to that perfect harmony and that perfect flow.
Yeah.
Because I think that everybody, just to relate on the feminine side of the coin, being a woman, I, in my experience, I've always been more submissive, and that is as well has been out of balance. Just like the men have been a little bit more dominant and controlling,
right.
the women have been a little bit more submissive. However, it goes both ways in different cases. And I think that's the main thing to remember when we're dealing with issues like this is that everybody has been told something that is a lie about relationships, and so we're all basically having to clear out and start from scratch and start from new, and that's where conversations like this are very important, so that we can really get a new foundation of what it is to be healthy and what it is to be harmonious, and how do we in fact let go of all this domination and control within ourselves. I think that's a great question.
Absolutely. And what I want to also communicate to everyone listening is that you two have had to work at this together, right?
Yes.
This
Definitely.
isn't, you two have been quote unquote whole in your own right, but that doesn't mean that, okay, we come together and it's all roses or it's all perfect. We're in perfect harmony, and now, you know, we're conduits for God's light. You know, it's more than that. Like, you two have a very interesting story of how you even came to this house to stay here for a couple of weeks with me.
Yeah.
I would love to dive into that a little bit.
Well, yeah, essentially, yeah, through, after we kind of met, we had been just really sitting with each other and traveling, and going through numerous situations that essentially caused us spiritual growth in an accelerated way. For example, we were living out of a car for a while here. And in the process of living out of the car and sharing such a confined space with someone you are really, you know, caring about and wanting to get to know, it causes you the natural catalytic action to actually experience another person. And that's not all roses, as you said. I mean, this comes down to, you know, me. I like to wake up early and do my things and etc. Well, okay, well, how does this flow with her schedule, since we're now sharing a very compacted vehicle? And through these processes of actually sitting down and discussing things like sexual desires and discussing things like drinking like water habits, learning to actually share little together, I think was the ultimate thing that really helped us, was like being in a position where we almost had nothing, but paradoxically had each other. So it's funny to note that we have what a lot of people are searching for, but at the same time, they have what we're kind of searching for. So it's like we can share in this understanding. And yeah, so coming together with us was more sharing the spiritual side of the coin with each other, because that we are very spiritual beings individually and collectively. So it was really interesting in that regard.
Yeah, and I feel like it does come back again and again. All these questions come back to doing the inner work and the inner meditation. And we didn't try to go out and get jobs because we knew that the real work was inside of us. So we would just sit in our van and we would just do the inner work. And eventually we were able to actually reflect a new situation where we're now here in this beautiful house with you, Ronnie. And that we didn't get that through changing our outside reality. We got that through changing our inner reality.
Let's touch on that one quickly, because for a lot of people, and we hear this a lot, like, do the inner work, then the outer world will change. But for a lot of people, that they don't have a tool set or a manual for what that means. So there
is a I would say a step in between as well, which is do the inner work, understand yourself, understand what's blocking you, and then receive the guidance through your meditation of what it is you need to do in order to create your reality. Because there usually is an action to take, but the clarity of what that action is comes from the inner work.
Okay, yeah. So finding inner clarity through some kind of meditation or just being with yourself and listening for what that action step is, and then taking action when it's presented to you.
Exactly.
Right. Well, and also we have to touch on this, you know, before we even touch on the esoteric stuff of spirituality, let's come down to the foundations and really talk about the diet. You know, it's the diet that really allows the energy to flow and allows you to have a healthy mind state to make educated decisions from. And then this is also where the spiritual guidance comes into play. It's not like you are this like you're just free-flowing being. You actually have the energy to co-create with this force, whatever we are.
So through the diet, we actually are able to become clear enough to receive that guidance in ourselves. Because when we cleanse and get all the heavy metals and everything out of our body, and we feel that purity and that breath come in, that health, that's the state of being that you want to be in order to actually experience that clarity.
Because then no matter what situation you're actually in, you are feeling good. And I think that's a big thing to say, is that a lot of us are really controlled inside by the external reality. And this is also in human relationships, like, oh my gosh, my girlfriend liked this guy's picture. Oh no, like that must mean this, that must mean that. And we start just creating this negative self-sabotaging doubt with this sword, and I think that's a big destroyer of people's thing, is just how to, it's okay, and just let it be,
So not being so reactionary over every little thing, and then creating some negative projected outcome of what this thing means. Like, oh, he did this or she did this, that means this from my past, and see it's repeating. Yeah. And then the perpetuation of these negative feedback loops that essentially are determining the things that show up in our life, and also to our ability to have clarity when an opportunity is presented, but it might be disguised based on the reflection of our state of mind.
Yes.
So we're not sure, and we are basically in a state of paralysis.
Yeah, it's definitely it. A lot of people create their own fear, and they create it through, let's just put it this way, a lot of people destroy the good relationships.
Right. Yes.
You see it over and over again in this society. You find the good girl, everything's going right, but you think, the person as the male or female thinks, this is going to perfect, there has to be a problem. And then thus they create their own problem and their own destruction.
And I think that does translate to life in general, because life is way better than we have been told it can be.
Right.
I like the phrase, life is not mathematical, it's magical.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's another thing about a relationship is really to keep your focus on the magical aspects. The fact that you're in such a state of appreciation and gratitude for this being and for your life that you're creating together, that there is no room to argue. And if there is something that comes up, we can just talk about it and conversate, and then come to an understanding.
Communication.
And that really is basically the most important thing about relationships.
And it's been one of the bigger problems. I mean, connecting even more to this, the grounded aspect of the social media. I mean, like, everyone is learning to communicate, but also I'll speak for myself in this case, right? I love to love everyone. I love seeing everyone. I love being happy. I love seeing other people and telling them how beautiful they are. But then we also have this understanding at the soul and energetic level that I am able to give my love fully to someone, but know that she is who I am in love with. So I can love you, Ronnie, with all of my heart, but at the same time, it's more of like, when you love yourself, you can love others, and this is a key factor, and communication is what allows these things to grow. If you don't communicate, let's just relate this to gardening for all these gardeners out there, right? If your plant is saying, yo, I need nitrogen, well, and if you don't give your plant the nitrogen, you begin to see the yellowing of the leaves and etc. So it begins to die. In this case, the metaphorical relationship begins to die because you're not giving and receiving equally. So
a lot of people feel that, I think it's because of the miscommunication or the lack thereof, because someone feels that they're not comfortable communicating, or we get into this thing of walking on eggshells because we don't want to trigger something. That's pretty common.
I've definitely experienced that.
Yeah, and so there becomes this thing where you let something burrow inside of you instead of properly communicating it, and then your partner doesn't get the communication. They don't know the signal. So, for example, a partner could be making tea, could be making food, could be supporting the partner in ways that they feel are being very supportive, but the other person doesn't receive it because to them they need support in a different area. Right. But who would know that if you don't bridge that?
Right. Well, and this is something we face every day, even as a couple. I mean, just the other morning, to make this a little more personal for our audience, we woke up and we were both kind of in this state of like, we have to do something. We were basically creating our own busy feeling in our life, even though there was nothing to actually do. And it resulted in us not communicating properly. And we both actually got the feelings of aggression and, with each other, of saying, what are you doing? Like, what's going on here? Like, but using our inner disciplines and awareness, we said, okay, there must be something that we're missing here if we're arguing. Right. And this is where the communication, we sat down and we addressed it. We shared some tea and truly got to the root of the issue. Oh, and come to find out, it was about the, like money issues. Right. So this is where, like she was saying, it really comes down to the money with relationships too. The relationship with money. What we're really seeing is relationships are far more controlled sociologically in our own lives than we would like to expect or like to think. Like we discussed, for example, some people creating relationships because they are damaged, and they create their own situation where they don't want to leave the relationship because then they're not supported in a way that help them. So then they'd have to support themselves. It really is communication, really, and just to be honest with that person.
And the other part of communication is to take responsibility for your own self-work. So instead of blaming him, I look at myself, ideally, and I see myself, okay, what is this in me? And then I'm able to relay that, well, I feel frustrated about this, but I understand that you're not doing anything to me that's wrong.
Right.
I'm just frustrated, and so let's talk about it. And
So in order to have those consistent conversations, I think to myself, because I've been in many of them, sometimes it can be that point where you're like, oh, okay, are we going to have to do this every day? Is it going to be like this, we're always going to have to sit down and process kind of thing? That's one perspective, of course, but another one is that, because the only reason that thought form comes up, at least in the way that I have it, is because I'm so focused on myself, and I think that I have to actually do everything. That's why I'm not wanting to take time, because I have created a load of work, or,
right.
The idea of work anyways. So essentially I have to carry that load. But really, if you have that communication with one another, it actually speeds up and creates opportunities, because you're tuning up your tuning fork together. Yes. And you're reflecting back to each other. Yes. So the blind spots that I might have or someone might have are revealed to you, so you can actually speed up that process.
Yes, yeah. Definitely. And yeah, that's where the communication dynamic actually takes a whole other spin on it, is through these processes of inner work, because now you're communicating with not just your exterior, you're communicating with yourself in real time in that moment. So you're saying, when I sit down with you, I am feeling this. This is how I feel. And this is where a lot of people have that problem, because we've been conditioned as males that you don't express your feelings. You don't have that, and this is where a lot of men, they break down crying, and their friends are, oh, look at him. Oh, he's crying. He must. No, it's okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay to have feelings of, babe, I just want to go and run through the fields or something. It's okay to have these feelings, and not denying these aspects is a key in the communication, because it determines just being real with each other. Just simply that, just being as real as you can with that person, and being comfortable knowing that, this is the truth.
And in relationship back into work and into money, we can, once we have this level of harmony where we can have this flow between the two people, then the room has been freed for us to create more. And that's where everybody wants to have a lifestyle where they're doing exactly what they love to do. They're enacting their true passions, and they're also being fully supported financially and in all ways. And that's what the Creator wants for you. So, in order to actually make that happen, by having a partnership that is harmonious and flowing together, where there is a clear communication, and both people have a purpose that they know that they're enacting individually, then the two worlds can actually come together and create a whole new reality that, for example, I am a musician, and I am enacting the life purpose of presenting my arts to the world and receiving blessings back and forth like that. And my beloved has his other passions. He's a extremely powerful meditator, and he knows all these ancient practices of how to use your abilities, your psychic abilities, and he's extremely important key player in the revolution of our brains. So we both have these particular things that we're really good at and that we're choosing to share with the world. And now that we have the harmony, as I said, we can actually do that and be supported in that. So now that I have him, I can be a musician, and it's not that I'm not strong by myself, it's quite the opposite. But I also now have this extra added support that is really invaluable.
Right, and also you're not using that support in your partner codependently. You're not using it as your life support.
Exactly. You, again, maintain the sovereignty, maintain your individual's identity, but you also harmonize.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important for everybody to take these words, sovereignty, harmonization, unity, and really meditate on those words and see what they are for you. What is the feeling you get when you actually tune into the concept of the energy of unity, the energy of harmony, the energy of sovereignty,
mm-hmm.
and
mm-hmm.
really form your own idea of what that really means.
So it appears to me that in our society, there's a huge emphasis placed on work ethic and perseverance and essentially pushing the boulder up the hill, right? Like Sisyphus. Yeah. And there's a lot of like reverence and respect and pride to that. And it's interesting to think about the idea that what the Creator does want for us is to be extensions of that force, and that means that there would only be abundance because the Creator is never in absence. Therefore, right. Everything actually is abundant.
Yeah.
Ultimately, so the idea that in order to create our dreams or live the life that we want to in full abundance, it appears to me that the thing that actually holds us back from fully expressing that is the belief systems, the which all create limitations, and the different ways that we've clouded up our windshield, so to speak. And if we can progressively get back into clarity, these things start to just kind of happen in our lives.
Well, and this is where it comes back to, once again, looking at the entire pie chart of what this is all going on for, right? We're going through, for lack of better terms, a revolution in consciousness, right? You know, we all thought World War III would be something physically we'd be seeing, but what we're really seeing, it's the war of the mind, really. It's like the attempt to
like inner civil war.
Right, to have us be swayed into maintaining this old way of living. And I mean, that's where it really is we start really seeing why. The question really is why. Because we start seeing, why do I think this way? Why am I acting, etc.? And in relationships with all of life, we've been told this. No one gave us now a new handbook for this new paradigm that we're entering into, really. I mean, you know, we have guidance from all these ancient practices and teachers, and we have other people's, like, what we're going through in their expression of it. But really, though, it's a collective. When they say evolution, they mean we don't really know we're going into it, you know, but it's happening nonetheless. And I'm a part of it, you know, like all of us. You see this with all of us going through these changes in our lives and how we're relating to life itself. You know, on the Hawaiian Islands, we're seeing self-sustainability jumping up. We're seeing conscious awareness and meditation and actively using sound for healing, you know, and actually being a part of what this Creator really is embodying through us is this limitless possibilities and probabilities of your life. And I feel that this is kind of where all of this really is kind of leading to, and it really comes down to, how do you relate to God? Or call it what you will, right? How do you relate to the source field? How do you relate to your consciousness? How do you relate to food, anything? And it really comes down and back to love, right? It does. Mm-hmm. It comes back to, well, you know what? Like, love dissipates all these barriers. Doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter what you're eating. If I love you, it's okay.
Love.
Yeah,
exactly.
And that's what we really have to learn as a species is unconditional love. We know how to love humanly. We know how to give our heart to another person and share our heart, but unconditional love is something completely different. It's an all-encompassing energy. It's the life force of the universe. It's the very fabric of the universe. It's what it's all made of. So when you embody that type of love, there are no conditions. It's not like I love him if he does this for me or if he's like this way. No, I just love him no matter what.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so important, because if I can't love him, then I can't love myself. Mm-hmm. And so it again comes back to self-love as well. And once you truly love yourself, that is the position where you will attract another being who loves you just as much.
Okay, good note to continue on here. So what's going to come up for all of us listening to this, for most of us, I should say, is that we want to maybe create that or anything in our life, not necessarily to fill a void not necessarily to fill a void, but in order to, it's simply something you want to experience. You know,
exactly.
Being in that partnership, seeing what that's really like to love somebody on a whole nother level, right? Mm-hmm. So let's talk about, I know there's no manual. I'm being very specific with the way I phrase this, but I think you know where I'm going with this, is that how can we all start to migrate further with more clarity into that place?
Great question.
Well, and this is where each individual being is so unique in their creating ways and how they view life, where I would say that there almost isn't a correct way other than focus on the inner spirit that is calling and guiding you to whatever you're being called to. And it's really obvious, you know, if you wake up in the morning and you feel like going outside, well, there's a reason you're feeling that. It's because your heart is calling, you know, and using now like the Institute of Heart Maths research, you know, and all this numerous things, we've discovered that, you know, the neuroganglion tissue that's actually on the heart that allows us to actually see there's a small brain. Scientists actually call it that, the small brain of the heart, you know.
Well as in the belly, all the neurons in the belly.
Right. And all these...
it's like I have a gut feeling.
Yeah, these chakra points, you know, they're really these massive nerve endings that are just a... synergistic compound to the actual like light aspect of these swirling portals of light when you access the higher frequencies of thought. So yeah, you know, like just really like listening to what this field is telling you, because the heart is way stronger than the brain. And this is medical science. This isn't esoteric wisdom from the past. This is that we can demonstrate empirically that while your heart is radiating a field, and the Institute of Heart Maths actual instruments, they said that it ended at about, 200 meters or something, but it was also, they mentioned that their instruments couldn't go further. So who knows really where the heart really ends in that sense. So
and so we're all connected in that field of love, right. And you can actually measure it.
And love this is why I say, when I say love, I mean, I'm not just talking like, oh, hey, I love.
Talking about a very measurable phenomenon.
Right. When you are in a constant state of gratitude and feeling appreciative for life and those around you, when they say raise your vibrations, I mean, you are actively raising and lifting your heart. You are lifting the weight of your heart. You're raising its vibration. And this is where you start emanating a field that people come up to you and they say, wow, I don't know what it is about you, but I just feel the love. You've heard that before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel the love from these musicians. Well, it's because they're doing what they want and they know their self.
Mm-hmm.
And for someone who doesn't, if there's anybody out there who doesn't even understand what we're talking about, think of the sun. That is the concept of what we are really truly becoming, is we're becoming just pure, radiant light
in self-sustaining ways.
In self-sustaining ways, and that translates in different ways when you have this human body. But inside, internally, that shining sun is being radiated and projected out, and really creating the reality is that pure light. So when we see the sun, we can actually have an example of that just pure unconditional love just radiating out to everyone.
Right, because the sun doesn't charge us, right? I mean, the sun is just a constant radiation of that love in this, and our bodies and our realities actually need this light to continue and thrive. But the sun doesn't charge, thankfully, because, like, this is not something we should charge. And this comes into, once again, how we interact with life.
Right, the sun doesn't charge, exactly. So that comes back to the concept, okay, now we're in human bodies, and in this system we use money. So how does that translate? How does being the sun translate into actual day-to-day concepts such as these? Well, it's the law of attraction. What you put out there comes back to you. So when you're radiating like the sun, you are actually feeling an immense amount of love, compassion, bliss, just pure flowing awareness, and an abundance of energy. So when you feel that abundance of energy and you're radiating that out, you're going to get an abundance of energy back in that has the same quality as what you've put out, that feeling that you've put out.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have that with a conscious intention as in your mind of, I am creating this, I'm asking for this, I'm receiving this, I am this, for example, money, then with the intention and the feeling together, you put that out to the universe, and then you just let it go, and you watch it come in, and you again receive guidance of an action step you may need to take.
Well, and to make it even more like, grounded in the sense, it's relatable to, once again, gardening. And you see this in numerous texts throughout our lives and ancient texts, etc., that you plant the seeds and then you water the seeds. You nurture them with your intent, in this, you keep it going, and then you don't sit there and watch it and complain that it's not growing. You let it go and you move on to the next development or project in your life. And then when it's time, that project that you completed will bear fruit. Mm-hmm. And this is where this whole concept of harvest comes in the Bible and, in the law of one and all these other things, is that they're relating to the fact that, look, like, what you plant energetically is what you come back with. In the simple put, what you eat into your body is what you're made of. Mm. So if you're willingly ingesting nasty things, are you going to be a high reflection? No. So it's the same thing with the energetic aspect of life, where if you're helping others, if you're of service and really loving what you're doing, love comes back. You don't ever hear, like, people getting like nasty things in return. And if so, it's something they have to experience to radiate that love to that person even more. But living in that state of unconditional love really is a key factor in all of this.
Yeah, and so like what you were saying also that caught my eye was that it's not like a vending machine interaction that you have with life or with the sun, because the sun is not monetized.
Right.
Right, so you don't have to pay a fee of some sort in order to be deserving of the sun's light.
Exactly.
It's just a natural function of the reality matrix that we're involved in.
Yeah, and that's something that I really like to touch upon in terms of like the whole concept of going to college and getting a job, and that whole timeline and paradigm that many people have been put in or put themselves in. Because our parents, and this is my experience, because our parents wanted us to, because that's what they did, Mm-hmm. And so, again, we're like, as I've done, I've had to completely, I went through it and realized it wasn't the right path for me, it wasn't working. And so I had to stop and then take an entirely different path, which caused me to come here to Kauai and take a giant leap of faith and wake up and realize that I can do whatever I truly want to do, and I don't have to follow somebody else's rules. I don't have to follow somebody else's path, mm-hmm. their mm-hmm. thoughts and beliefs about what's right for me. Mm-hmm. So it's like about taking that back and realizing that you don't actually have to work hard in order to be deserving of anything. That is the biggest lie. That's one of the biggest lies they've told us. Really, what is true is that we are all worthy of everything that we truly want in our hearts. And when we find that self-love inside of ourselves, that self-worth, that I'm just a child of the universe. I deserve everything the universe, all the gifts that the universe wants to give me.
And the gifts that are for you.
Exactly. And there's specific ways in which you receive gifts. For example, I have received the gift of sound, and so now I'm able to share it. I've received the gift of being able to be in this house, so now I'm able to create. And so for me, I actually just receive the gifts that the universe is giving me without stipulations of, well, no, but I need to work hard and do all this stuff in order to actually receive it. Because if I don't do that, then, like, you know, I'm just taking handouts. Like, this isn't.
Right.
And so all those thoughts, we just kind of calm them down and realize that, no, just as you are perfect. And just as you are worthy and deserving of all the goodness that is life.
And right, and this is where work, well, and you see this all the time with people like, oh, well, you have to work for everything, you have to work for it. Right, the natural work ethic that we have is really, from what I'm experiencing, is aimed at our personal creation. It doesn't mean we don't deserve something.
Right, that's a big difference.
That's a big difference. It means, like, you know, like she's saying, it's like, I don't, you know, I had this conversation before with someone of, you know, like where I climbed a coconut tree and got a coconut, and someone said, well, how much did that cost? And I actually had to explain that the coconut tree didn't charge me. Right? It's really where they're like, oh my gosh, how could you didn't pay for that? That's still like in this bizarre thing where the work, even though I put the energy in, I physically worked, climbed the tree, get the coconut, came back down, it still doesn't make sense from that conditioned mind state because, well, you didn't earn the coconut. You didn't work to get the money to buy the coconut, right?
Right.
It's this bizarre thing because it's the store mentality. I go to the store and I purchase the coconut kind of thing.
And there's all kinds of, you know, interesting little moral packages that shows up in. And I just want to clarify even further what I'm getting from both of you in this dynamic is that it's one thing to work for something. We're not saying you don't work for things, right? That's not what is being said, is that no matter where you are in your life, you are deserving of anything you want. That's the difference. Because I look at human behavior, I look at what actually motivates people to do things. And, you know, remember that Will Smith movie? God, what was it? The Pursuit of Happiness. And it's very clear that individual who was in pursuit of happiness believed he deserved it, which is why he went through that journey. Right. If he didn't think he deserved it or his son deserved it or whatever, there would be no impulse to even take the first step, right?
Exactly.
So it's just to clarify what's being said here is that no matter what, you always, if you have a vision or something, you deserve to have it.
Exactly, and to me, it goes even beyond deserving. It's that I will have it because it's what I'm here to do.
Yes.
And so I'm just following my path that's already been really laid out for me. I'm just walking the path of my dream, and it's developing, it's unfolding, and that's the feminine way of walking through the world, is just letting it happen, being part of the mystery, not understanding everything, but still going forward. And then the masculine energy comes in and says, well, here's the structure that we can create, and here's the concept of knowing what is ahead of you, knowing what is the right thing to do in each moment.
Mm-hmm.
I call it the internal guidance system.
Right.
And once we develop that, it's like basically like once we decide, okay, we're deserving of having the dream that we want. Yes, we believe that we can have that. We believe we can create it. And yes, we're willing to do what it takes to create that. Okay, well, now you have these three basic things out of the way. Well, now it comes to what truly is it that you want to do? What is the life purpose?
Right.
And that's where the meditation comes in.
Right.
And for me, I found what I'm here to do, like with my life in terms of like the career, like the music and the arts and everything that I want to share with the world. Before I actually met my beloved, but it was a stepping stone to understanding myself and being sovereign, because now I have this life path that I'm walking, and then he just showed up, and now we're walking side by side together.
Right.
And he has his own sovereign path.
Exactly, and learning to distinguish like you said, between deserving something and then having to work for something, it's so different, because everyone always says, like I'll even say it simply put, a lot of people, can go out there and cut down a tree, do their physical work, whatever they call physical work, go to work in the 9 to 5, but then they get home and they don't know how to lift their own heart. And this is where it's a self-destructive cycle. So what is work really? Well, at the end of the day, this work is the direct reflection of you, and how does this, how does it work? Well, as you do that inner work, you find out that it's really exhausting to unravel these inner knots of fear. And you start seeing that, whoa, and you've said this before, it's simple, but not necessarily easy. Mm-hmm. Everyone always says, oh, just let go of your addiction, or, oh, just let go of it. Yeah, but, it's that now you see the true courage. You see all these people that are like survivors of heroin and stuff like that, and they're really powerful beings. I mean, like people like Johnny Depp that have had pasts or, et cetera, and they come out of it so powerful. Well, it was the inner growth that allowed them to physically express that power in the real time because they knew they were deserving of life. Mm-hmm. They proved it. No one can tell them that they're not worth it. They just can't. Mm-hmm. And so now it comes into, okay, so we have these people that are now expressively doing their art to the world, and they are receiving money for their own personal creation. I mean, like George Lucas, it's not like there's a job for Star Wars creation out there, right? You don't go on to Craigslist and say, oh, I'm gonna make a movie. An innovator. Right. You're the paradigm destroyer, right? You're going through and cutting through your own path. And this is what we've chosen. And it's simple, but not easy. And this is
pioneering a whole new way.
Right. Pioneering a new way to experience life. And this is why we say there's no new manual, so to speak.
I just have to comment on that idea real quickly. It's fascinating, right? Because we look at all the quote-unquote pioneers that we respect and revere, and we immortalize them and put them on a pedestal, right? But what's interesting is that then that pedestal depiction creates a following, almost like a cult following. We use that term a lot, cult-like following. And the thing that we admire about them is that they paved their own way, and yet we're trying to follow in their formula. Yeah. So that's an interesting one, too, that I realized when I was in the shadow of certain people that I respect. I had to realize, like, wait a minute, what is it that I am resonating with them on? What is it beyond the superficial that I actually admire about them? And it's those kind of traits. And once I realized that, I was like, wow, okay, then I can stop living in their shadow and I can blaze my own trail.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating.
Like you said, I mean, you look at, everyone's thinking it, right? Einstein. It's the most natural, basic person that everyone knows right off the bat. I mean, you can read his autobiography at your leisure, of course. But it really came down to that he was a rebel in school. He didn't go the way they wanted him to. He would just go and sit alone in his office and just do meditation and just contemplate using his imagination.
Contemplate the universe.
And all these people would come into his life saying, why aren't you out doing anything? But then he's writing on the board and he looks back like, what do you mean? I'm doing this right here. But it wasn't a physical thing, right? It wasn't that physical thing. That this is where people have the work thing of like, well, yeah, but I see that you're doing this, but you're not working.
Right, you're not actually doing something.
Right, and Einstein and Nikola Tesla and all these people, when you see them, they're not out there in their hard hat on the street doing their construction. No, they're sitting in a chair, smoking a pipe, looking at a book, and peering over their glasses at you. Because they're saying, look, like my work that I really give to the planet is through these concepts such as writing, such as my abstract ability to handle these thoughts. That's the imagination, and there's numerous quotes about that from Einstein,
Yeah, the imagination. And that's what we're bringing back is the pure imagination and that childlike wonder of the world.
Right.
So it's like getting back to that inner child and really, really getting in touch with that joyful, wondrous aspect of life where everything is new and everything's exciting, everything's beautiful. everything has a mystery to it, and
the
and
view we're looking at
adventure.
is pretty epic.
Exactly. Yeah, the sun is setting over here, and when we have that inside of us, and then we take that childlike wonder and we create with it, and we realize that we are perfect just the way we are. At just that very baseline, we are perfect. Then we can build, that is the foundation that we can build from and create our dreams from.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think, like, even then, like, in relationships, we also see that traveling for me in my personal life, it helped me to paint my reality. It let me see what I like, what I don't like, all these qualities about life.
Yeah, and that's very important, to look back on my own path and realize that if I hadn't gone off on my own for a while and just kind of, trial and error, figured it out, been in all different types of situations, traveling all over the U.S. and Hawaii, well, then I wouldn't have become so strong. Then I wouldn't have learned all these lessons, and then I wouldn't have had so much of an easier time with my beloved, because now that I've done all that, I'm here and I'm like just ready to just be with you and just grow with you. And
right.
It becomes more simple now.
You've had all those experiences that, they all say the college years, right? Well, what have you seen about college is what is it really becoming? I mean, it's notoriously known that you go to a big university. I mean, we've all seen the movies, right? Yeah. It's basically the same.
You have a lot of sex, you cram, you drink a lot. It's all very well accepted. That's why there's these clubhouses we call sororities or whatever, and it's very well known by all the authoritative figures that are running the show that there are going to be parties, there are going to be these mess-making, concentrated mess-making sessions every weekend, right? So, so it's a very interesting thing to think about, because when I study human design, one of the things that comes up is the timeline, decade-wise, decade-to-decade timeline that most humans typically will go through. From 20 to 30 are considered your mess-making years. Maybe now for a lot of us it's like 20 to 25 or 20 to 21 even, where we concentrate that, we have those experiences, and some of us get flipped out of it sooner than later. But essentially your 20s from that perspective is your mess-making years. And that doesn't mean you get drunk and go party. That means that you make mistakes.
Right.
And you learn and grow, and you concentrate all those experiences. So now you actually have practical wisdom based on those lessons. And then you go to 30 or 40, and it's more about, then you become more refined, more focused, maybe start thinking about family, whatever. It's just that idea that actually making messes, quote unquote, or blazing a new trail is actually part of the natural cycle of life.
Exactly.
But it feels unnatural because we're domesticated and we don't actually know who we are.
Right.
Based on society.
And that's the other thing about it is, the whole idea of education and what we're teaching our children isn't clearly, as you can see, the patterns. It's just not working. The children are growing up and they're depressed and they're angry and they've got drinking problems, So what are we doing? What are we teaching them? And how can we teach a way that, like, children actually do have a foundation they need to go off and blaze a trail, but also have the foundation of who they are and have a strong identity before they actually even go out into the world. So then those mess-making years become a little less
messy.
Exactly.
When I think this is where, you see this, in our high schools, right? You go through high school, you spend all those years, other grades even before this previous, you get to the end of it, your senior year, and you choose a college, right? That's what everyone does. You choose the college and you jump right into it. Okay, well, those mess-making years are now a part of your curriculum of your schooling. So this is why you can see this correlation in that. They're not actually out traveling and not creating messes in that sense, but living life, learning what it's like to run out of food.
Because the experience of life really is the strongest and the greatest school, the school of life.
And we even discussed the samurai, who actually went out into nature, and nature trained these people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you see this in, like, you know, maybe some of your listeners can relate to this, but, you know, all these stories like Dragon Ball Z, you know, and all these martial arts stories of these people that they're not training at downtown New York, right? They're out in life. They're out living in the caves, you know, traveling and learning what it's like. And then they always come back to society and relay what they've learned, and they become the figure that everyone looks up to. Mm-hmm. And this comes back to blazing your own trail. I mean, like, let's just relate it to the Bible even, right? I mean, the figure that we've been told is Jesus. Well, no one really told him a path. He just kind of busted it out and said, all right, here we go. Right. I'm going to learn about it. And that's, I think, the archetype that we're really trying to explain here is, like, somehow, like, the seeker of life and the experience. And after you've gone the route of life, you now have developed the wisdom to actually ground it and have a family, because you know what it's like in all these other ways.
It's the hero's journey. The
hero's journey that Joseph Campbell has discussed in numerous ways. And our children just simply aren't receptive because they've been dumbed down and they've been told, well, guys, it's just part of debt. You got to go into debt right off the bat. It's who we are. Sorry, guys. Like, just, you know.
They're telling us the exact opposite of what's true, is that life is abundant. It's an infinite energy flow, but they're telling us, no, there's a constriction, there's a scarcity. That's not actually true. I mean, if you look at it from an outside perspective, you look at the planet, well, there actually is enough resources on the planet to comfortably feed and clothe and shelter and give medicine and education to every single person on the planet. It's just
easily
the way that we're just redistributing.
Yeah,
it would take a redistribution of all of those resources.
I think it comes down to, and Michael Beckwith in that movie that we watched together, I think really brilliantly put the point out there, is that, you know, Albert Einstein said that you can't solve a problem with the same consciousness that created it in the first place, and that's ultimately the root of every epidemic that we have in our world at every turn. I don't care what it is, what's your rationale in your little box for why this is different than this. The reality is that the consciousness of doubt has created a drought, so to speak. That's really the metaphor and the formula. If you want to do 1 + 2 = 3, then that's kind of how you have to look at it, from that level of logic. And I don't want to go on a whole thing about that. I don't. You're welcome to jump in.
Well, I mean, when you say that, it makes me think of something I was thinking about earlier in our conversation about faith and trust. And the concepts of faith and trust are extremely important now in this new way of being. The things that are falling apart are that we have to have this security in order to feel okay. Well, if we let that go and we jump into the mystery, then we are using the concept of faith and trust. And when we actually have that, when we take that leap of faith and we just trust the universe to guide us, and we trust ourselves to be capable and responsible and strong, then we create a reality in which it's more unlimited, really. Mm-hmm. And that is the only way that I actually have gotten to this point where now I am extremely happy. Now I have a high level of inner peace. Now I have a reflection of my twin flame beloved who supports me and loves me so much that it's indescribable. Now I have all these wonderful things in my life. Well, the only way that I actually got to this point was through that process of trust and faith. And so it's something that really every individual has to feel for themselves, but it is very, very real.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. So we are at that top of the hour. What is a nice insight that each of you would like to relay to the audience?
I would like to say that in forgiveness, you will actually stop the wheel of karma from actually coming into your own life and affecting you. So forgive yourself for creating the world in your life this way. Forgive yourself for the things that have happened in your life. Forgive yourself for not being strong enough in those moments, and just see and learn from it. And it might even help to take some time just to really, study what it means to be a male or a female, So I think that's my closing words is I love you. And it's okay to feel that. I love you. Love yourself too. It's okay.
Yeah, I think that with that, my closing thought really is to live in the perfection of each moment and trust that each moment is carrying you into the next one and that it is truly okay. Everything's going to be okay, and it already is.
Beautiful. Thank you, too, for making the time to sit with me on the show.
Thank
you. I really
you.
appreciate it.
Yeah, pleasure's ours. Thank you.
Yeah. And for all of you listening, thank you for making it this far into this exploration into consciousness and what we're all doing here, why are relationships so important, and really fine-tuning how we relate to one another and how we relate to ourselves. This is Ronnie Landis. This has been the official Ronnie Landis podcast show, and we will see you on the next episode. Aloha.
Aloha.
Aloha.